Live. What's going on, everybody?
Yo, 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 yo. Getting
Let's,
some technicalities set up on the back end. Just give us 1 second. But as always, we will be getting started.
yep. Anybody on YouTube, please hit the like button, subscribe. Anybody on Twitter, follow us. We have new live streams every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And today we started a little bit early. We had to start early today.
Yeah, got some travel and stuff going on, so just trying to accommodate for schedules.
Cool. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We going to be going into Bitcoin today. Going to be going into some of the Bitcoin treasury companies. MicroStrategy has some big dates coming up that you got to be paying attention to. Going to be getting into that. Going into all the noise and all the chaos that is the Bitcoin space right now. So we're going to be getting you guys brought back up to speed with everything that has been going on in the space. A lot of exciting things. If you're in the space, you should be excited because it's looking extremely, extremely positive right now. The traditional financial markets haven't been doing that great, but Bitcoin is at all-time highs, and it doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon. And just a lot of recent news that came out just this week that makes us even more bullish on the future of BTC. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it here today. Let's go ahead and start with the charts. I'm going to pass it over to Sean. He's going to go over some of the Bitcoin charts.
Okay, give me 1 quick second while I get something set really quick.
Shout out to Adrian, 99% of altcoin are.
Okay. Apologies, I got too many windows up on my laptop right now, so just trying to consolidate, guys. Yeah, shout out to Adrian, 100%. We agree 100%. Let's see, share. Okay, we're going to start with the Bitcoin price. As usual, Bitcoin is up to 107. And there has been some games that have been going on as there's been war fears that have been talking about over in the Middle East. And at one point, there's escalations with the U.S. getting involved. And we've seen, markets sort of, have a spill down. We've seen that here. We had a dip all the way down to 98,000 as of late. And that was a buy the dip opportunity because, as you see, we are now back up to around 107,000. And a day or two later, President Trump has came out and announced a ceasefire, even though after that was announced, there were still some bombs that were dropping. So, it's one of those things where you don't really know what's real and what's fake. But you just have to buy all these dips, guys. We've been telling you guys this time after time for years now. You can't look at all the FUD. You have to be cognizant of what's going on in the world. But, since June 10th, let's just take a quick measured move. From June 10th to that pull down on June 12th, so less than a 2-week window, you've seen Bitcoin take 11% dump. So if you have any type of capital on the sidelines, what are you waiting for to deploy? Obviously, just have some strategy behind those deploys as you dollar cost average in. Not financial advice. Once again, we're two guys on the internet just giving you our opinions. We are not financial advisors. All this is just from how we're navigating the markets and what we're looking at. So Bitcoin coming in right below 107. This is on the daily chart. Let's look on the week. Well, before we do that, if you notice one thing, since this trend has been set since May 22nd, we did seem to put that peak in around 111,000. And you have to note that this is a low, this is a lower high, this is a lower low. Now, Will this be a sustained rally into the end of this week and going into next? That will still be determined. The level to pay attention to is that previous high around the $110,000 threshold. If we do get back up above that, then that lower low and lower high trend that has been going on in the short term will then break and potentially go back to the upside. But if we don't have a continuation up to that 110 range and we roll over, then the level to pay attention to is this wick down to 98,000. Or the candle closes, we could get a candle close below 100K. This is something to be mindful of. Right now, the RSI seems to be putting in, let's look on the higher time frame really quick. This looks like almost a textbook head and shoulders pattern that could be playing out, but we'd be lying if we did not pay attention to these bearish divergences that have been playing out when it comes to looking at the price action in comparison to the RSI. Looking at the RSI, we see that we had this price action come up to about 74,000 back in March of 24. Obviously, we had a pop since then and put in a higher low, which is a textbook bearish divergence, and then put in another higher low. As of right now, this could still be a trend to the upside, and that time will still be determined. If we do get a break above this downtrend, then we will get a pop of this overall macro inverse head and shoulders pattern. So that's what we see right now for Bitcoin. The time the dollar cost average when we were below 100K, as you see, that got bought up very quickly. Bitcoin treasuries, you're seeing nation states, you're seeing Bitcoin treasuries pop up left and right. That's the main narrative right now in this space. Let me see, one quick second here. I was making sure I was sharing the right tab. Cool. But getting into the Bitcoin treasuries, let's pivot there. And which one should we talk about first, Aaron? I know there's a lot on the list that we want to cover.
Let's look at Vanna first. They had a pretty good day.
Okay, Vanna. Okay, let's share this tab. So Vanna is a micro cap. And for those that do not know what Vanna is, Vanity Coffee is a Spaniard company that is basically a coffee company. They have 5 or 6 locations over in Spain, and they are now getting into the Bitcoin treasury game. Very, very small micro cap. They have 30 Bitcoin in total, and there's some potential big news on the horizon that could be coming out on the 29th. And nothing has been 100% guaranteed, but there's been a lot of speculation around them getting access to about $1 billion for their Bitcoin treasury. Now, if you do some quick math, let me just pull up my calculator really quick so you guys can just get an idea of the appreciation that could potentially happen in the midterm for this company. Looking at a market capitalization of right around 12 million euros. You got to do the conversion, but it's, I believe, around $15 million US. But if they have the ability to raise up to 100 billion, and let's just give them an average price buy-in of 120,000 Bitcoin, that's going from 30 Bitcoin up to 8,300 Bitcoin. So this could be just something to speculate on, a small play. Don't bet the house on it, but as you see, since this company had been listed in the respective exchange, it had just sort of went down and to the right, sort of like a lot of altcoins that we've seen. Once they get listed, they just sort of die. So it'll be interesting to see. This is an interesting narrative. As of late, looking on the daily, the price action did have a pop. It doesn't look like that, but let's look on the logarithmic, and you can see that since March, they had a bottoming out around 9 cents. At the current time of this recording, roughly almost 90 cents. And with this potentially bullish engulfing candle, you can look back into the right of the charts and look at the horizontals and see where the previous resistance and support levels were. So back in April, this acted as brief support, and support, we fell through it back in July, retested it, and then fell down. So as of today, we had a pop through this, and this is definitely like bullish price action. You see there's a brief cool off, consolidation, and then a pop again with another bullish engulfing candle. So this is potentially an up and coming Bitcoin treasury company. You have to keep your eyes on this one. We report on this. We'll let you know as soon as we hear something from that June 29th meeting that they're supposed to be holding regarding getting that funding. So once again, VANA is the ticker. Vanna Coffee, based out of Spain, definitely is a company to pay attention to. Once again, not financial advice. This is a risky play. There's nothing guaranteed in these markets. There's been a lot of euphoria, a lot of not altcoins, a lot of Bitcoin treasury companies have been popping as of late just off of news. We've seen this with the ICO mania back in 2017. We talked about this to ad nauseum, and now the narrative is that these treasury companies are the new altcoins, but you have to really see what their plan is end to end, and sometimes it's too early to tell. So that's why we're here reporting all this information to you guys. So that's Vanna. Did you want to discuss anything on that, Aaron?
Just add to it, like Sean said there, make sure to, if you invest in any of these companies, you don't know what these boards are going to do. You don't know what the CEOs, founders are going to do. They could buy the Bitcoin, they could sell the Bitcoin, they could be doing all this for hype, price could go up, and they could just sell shares into the market to enrich themselves. So there's always risk. But this company in particular, they have around 30 Bitcoin right now. They claim that they're going to raise $1 billion. They have $1 billion to raise. So at a $14 million market cap, if they raise $1 billion and they buy Bitcoin at current prices, most of these companies are trading at 3, 4, even like 3 MNAV all the way up to 10 MNAV. So you can do the math on that. If they can pull that off, you can see some huge gains from Vanity Coffee, but it's definitely high risk, but high reward comes with that as well. So invest at your own risk, and so definitely not financial advice.
Cool. What do you want to talk about next?
We can go into, let's do H100.
H100. Cool. Let's go into the charts. I'll let you kick this one off.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so H100 Group, you guys have been watching our channel, you know that they're a Swedish company. They just acquired this week another around 40 Bitcoin. They went from 160 to 200. So they're accumulating Bitcoin at a steady pace. And where they're sitting right now and what they could potentially raise, what they have coming in the future, they're having these raises, which are called tranches. And right now they've gotten through their first 4 tranches. Their next 4 tranches could potentially raise them upwards of around $90 million. So if they get through those tranches, that's going to give them another, $90 to $100 million. And from their current levels of where they're sitting at Bitcoin wise, they could get upwards to 1,000 to 1,200 BTC. And if you look at where the market cap is right now, and they keep the same MNAV, you can see a 5 to 6x from here in terms of the share price. If they can actually, in the short term, this is just short term, if they can get these initial converts, if they can get the money from these converts. And right now, through their last tranche, which is their highest convert price, they're sitting at around $11.27 for that to convert. The price of H100 right now is, I think, somewhere around there or maybe even higher. So they have the opportunity to convert all that money and get the Bitcoin. And if they can get 1,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, that would be huge for H100. And also one thing to think about with these Bitcoin treasury companies, once they get 1,000 Bitcoin, They're going to get into that OMB ETF, that kind of passive flows from there. It's not a big ETF right now. It's from, I believe, Bitwise. But I think that's going to be a bigger ETF in the future as the OMB ETF performs well. So that's something you got to watch out for too. When these companies get 1K plus Bitcoin, they're going to get automatically put into that ETF. And that's going to be something in the future that I think will grow in terms of the assets under management, which could help a lot of these companies get additional funding to then go buy BTC. Yeah, I think that's about it for H100. They're backed by Adam Back, and
yep, yes. I was going to mention that Adam Back has been involved in some of these initial tranches. So Adam Back, for those who don't know, which most of our followers and subscribers should know, is a Bitcoin OG. Been around Bitcoin since Bitcoin's been around, and if you do your due diligence on Adam and understand what he's doing, he's sort of acting like VC money when it comes to these Bitcoin treasury companies, but he's not going to just pour money into just any old company. So keep that in mind. So he likes what they're doing. We did have an interview with Sanders. Shout out to him. He was on the channel a few weeks back, letting us know what they had going on. So once again, just do your due diligence on these companies. Adam Back, being who he is to Bitcoin and the overall space, he believes in the company, and that's sort of what put this company on our radar. And then we did our due diligence, did our research, seeing what the company did, had some conversations with some individuals that were part of the team, and everything made sense there. But once again, everything is still too early. They have to have longevity. They're just starting this Bitcoin treasury company as of late, a few months in. So exciting things going on at H100. Shout out to the team over there.
One thing to mention here, when we did that interview, the stock price was at 2 SEC. And now we're at 12 SEC. So it's done a 6X. And that interview was, 3 weeks ago? So yep. It's been mania. It's been crazy in this space. So.
Yep, 700% return since that interview. So take that for what it's worth. Looking at the price action, there's not too much to go off here because, as you see, even TradingView on the daily has just started tracking this as of late April. But because of the Bitcoin, initiative that they've been doing as far as their acquisition goes, they've been very aggressive. Their price has popped from about. It started, looks around 78 cent SEC, up to where it is right now at 12 SEC, which is roughly 1.2 US dollars. So there's something to pay attention to. This is a Nordic company, but if you want to get more information, you can check more out at nordicsbitcoin.com. Here, this is the up and coming Nordic companies. We also had a interview with K33. Shout out to that team over there and what they're doing. And K33 and H100 are actually working together on a few items. But if you're interested in this area of the world and what's going on, and just to stay ahead on what's and who's buying what and who's the leader, you can see all this information once again at nordicsbitcoin.com. So that's H100. What do we have next?
We'll probably talk about strategy, S&P inclusion.
Okay. Kick it off. You want me to go to the price action and see what's up?
Yeah, I can kick it off. Share some key dates really quick with MicroStrategy. You have to be watching out for with the S&P inclusion. Ignore the remaining trading days is a little bit outdated here, but the end of Q2 is in 4 days, June 30th. If Bitcoin stays above around $96,000, that's going to qualify for a MicroStrategy or strategy to be included in the S&P 500. So we have some key dates to watch out for. If they qualify, there's still a process. They have to be approved by the S&P board, and they have to check mark them in. And just because they qualify doesn't mean they're going to get in right away. But you can see the upcoming dates. You have August 15th, September 5th, and September 19th. These are all the key dates, the ranking days, and when they'll be announced that they qualify on everything here. So I think a good measure that you can look at is Coinbase. Coinbase, when they were announced that they'd be included in the S&P, the market cap jumped, I think, 20 to 30% in a couple of weeks, and it's still going up. It jumped around $20 billion in market cap. So there's some analysts out there that predict when strategy gets included in the S&P, the market cap could jump 25 to $40 billion. So that'd be like a 20 to 30% move from where strategy is right now, and that could get it back up to levels around $500. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Saylor and team does if the MNAV expands because the market cap is going up, if they decide to hit the MSTR ATM, or they just lay off of it and let the market cap continue to go up and the share price continue to go up. And that's in the short term, obviously, but in the long term, this is huge for the space because now all the S&P passive flows, everybody that has a 401k buying into the S&P, they're going to be unknowingly buying Bitcoin through strategy. And as more of these companies get added into the S&P, if similar MetaPlanet ever gets added into the, I'm not sure if MetaPlanet would because they're a Japanese company, but if any of these other Bitcoin treasury companies get added into the S&P, it's just there's going to be more passive flows going into Bitcoin. So, and then as strategy continues to climb up the rankings of where they're listed at in the top market cap companies in the United States, as they climb that rank, they're going to get more allocation based on their rank. So I think right now Apple is the number one company. I'm not sure it's number one right now, but the number one company gets around a 3% allocation from all the passive flows in the S&P, which is a huge number. So that would go to strategy if they become the number one company, which means basically it's going to go to Bitcoin because Saylor is going to use all that money coming in to buy BTC, I would guess. But I think it's going to be interesting to see when they have that initial market cap like spike from the announcement, if they use kind of the offset of the MNAV to buy Bitcoin through the MSTR ATM.
Yeah, there's a lot of exciting things that's going on with strategy. One thing to note, as of late, the last so many buys, Saylor has not hit the ATM on the Common A underlying stock. He's been using Strike, Stripe, and Stride to accumulate Bitcoin in that capacity, which is extremely bullish for Common A shareholders because there's literally no dilution happening to those shares. It's those other vehicles. And that's the reason why he got those vehicles out there. I don't think people really fully, there's other use cases as well, but from an investment stance, but that's, one thing that can help with the ATM on the Common A shares to lessen the blow from investors. So that's definitely bullish from that stance. And then S&P inclusion, I think as of the end of this month, they should be considered or should be a high candidate to get S&P included, assuming Bitcoin doesn't tank over the next 4 to 5 days. Why this is included or why this isn't important, because Aaron mentioned a few of these talking points here, but now the big money has to buy the stocks. Index funds and ETFs are required to buy shares of every company in the index. So when strategy gets added, billions of dollars from these new funds will flow into that stock to match the index, which will cause us up, a huge spike in the price. There might be a run up prior to inclusion or once it's officially announced. And stock price typically jumps in these events. So all that buying creates a higher demand, even from retail investors. There's more visibility and legitimacy. This, I think, gives Saylor the head nod from the wider market getting this inclusion. But how you had mentioned that, everybody that's invested in some capacity into the S&P now getting exposure unknowingly, if they don't have direct exposure to Bitcoin, is a huge game changer for the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. So, Saylor is, breaking through glass ceilings, left and right. And remember, these Bitcoin treasury companies that we've been talking about, Saylor has set the standard and gave the blueprint to all these companies. So do not dismiss what's going on over their strategy. They're still working, they're still buying Bitcoin, they're still stacking, and they're doing it in a more creative fashion for common A shareholders. So, it's exciting times for strategy, and, that price, barring any type of black swan event or something cataclysmic happening, that price definitely should run before the year is out.
Definitely. You want to go ahead and get into MetaPlanet? They just bought another 1,200 Bitcoin. I know, Sean, you had a discussion with Chris over on Twitter. He's a big MetaPlanet investor, and he's a follower on Twitter.
Yep. Yeah, shout out to Chris. Chris was a early investor to both Strategy and MetaPlanet. Shout out to him. If you guys haven't checked out the interview, definitely check it out. There's a lot of alpha that was dropped in there, talking about their 555 plan and what they have going on. But I'm going to share this chart with you guys really quick. Let's see here. One quick second. And what this is just a quick summary of what MetaPlanet has been doing since the beginning of April. So what you're just looking at is really just Q2 in a nutshell. But if you just look over the past month and a half, really since you see their Bitcoin acquisitions, they went from 160, 319, 330, 145, 555. Then they broke into the 1,000 Bitcoin purchase threshold, and then it really hasn't fell down since over the past 6 or so buys. But if you just look over the past 45 days, they have 12,345 Bitcoin at the current time of this recording. And over the past 45 days, they've acquired 55% of that. So over the past month and a half, roughly, give or take a day or two, they've acquired 55% of their overall stack. So the reason I'm noting that is because, one, they're being very, very aggressive in a non-dilutive way to shareholders in their Bitcoin acquisition strategy. And they literally just started with 10% of the overall capacity of buying with their 555 plan. And this is just getting started. This company, by the end of the year, is going to be surprising a lot of people. And why do we say that? So if you look at this here, this is BitcoinTreasuries.net. You can look at the top 60 Bitcoin treasury companies. Quite a few of these we've talked about. Some of them we've had, the founders and CEOs on the planet or on the channel for an interview. But MetaPlanet has been just leapfrogging a lot of these companies. So with this past purchase, really over the past week or so, they went from 10 to number 7. And as of late, the past buy, this just passed Tesla. And there's been some tweeting going on from Simon and team, sort of tweeting at Elon and saying, we'll see you at the moon, and just basically notating that they've passed Tesla in their overall, Bitcoin share that they have. But there's a good chance that they're going to be in the top 5 potentially over the next week. As you see, CleanSpark and Galaxy aren't that far ahead of them. So they can definitely just make another really 600 Bitcoin purchase, and they would be really 500 Bitcoin purchase, and they would be above in the top 5. And it'll just be interesting to see as time progresses how this strategy continues to play out, because there's some crazy predictions by the end of the year. And they're not crazy from the stance of, just illogical because the numbers all make sense. It's just crazy for like, if you just look at the linear charts as to where they could be by the end of the year, that figure from where they were just 2 months ago to where they are today versus another 6 months from now. It's crazy how not just fast they're doing this, but how efficient the MetaPlanet team is cranking out these Bitcoin acquisitions. There's a couple charts that just wanted to show, and we'll share this tab here. Shout out to Chris. MetaPlanet's Bitcoin doubling rates. So the days to double with this linear line of best fit, you can sit there and have speculation. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So days to double, they're doubling their Bitcoin holding every 62 days. And I just showed you over the past 45 days where they've acquired 55%, of their overall Bitcoin stack currently. So that's even faster appreciation. That's over half of what they have now, which would be a double. 55% is over half in about a month and a half. That's 45 days. Didn't get the exact day count. It might be 46, 47, but what's a few days amongst friends? It's not 62 is my point. They're being very, very aggressive in their Bitcoin acquisition strategy. And also, as the numbers get bigger, it's a lot easier to go from 1 to 2 Bitcoins, 2 to 4 Bitcoins, 4 to 8. But as the numbers get bigger, going from 100 to 200 or 1,000 to 2,000, 2,000 to 4,000, 10,000 to 20,000, there's a lot more energy and a lot more liquidity and a lot more money that goes into, those buys as the numbers get larger. So it's going to be very interesting to pay attention to what this team's doing. They have a plan in place right now where they just started this plan. We've been talking about this on the channel. We've had that interview with Chris, and this is something that you guys should definitely pay attention to. Not financial advice, but MetaPlanet could be the number 2 to strategy being the gorilla in the room that everybody already knows. So just that's my unsolicited 2 cents on the MetaPlanet play right now. Did you have anything to say there, Aaron?
No, not really. It's really interesting. I think they're going to get a lot of Bitcoin, and like you said, they're going to surprise a lot of people with the amount of Bitcoin that they can get. And a lot of people in the space, I think, are comparing strategy to MetaPlanet to all these other companies. But it's not. You shouldn't compare MetaPlanet to strategy. You should be comparing all these companies to other companies that have no Bitcoin. And I think that's where the focus is lost. But yeah, I think MetaPlanet, it looks really good right now.
Yeah. Shout out to Simon, Dylan, and team. Keep executing, keep killing it. Yeah, you haven't checked out MetaPlanet, you've been living under a rock. Pay attention.
Cool. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about what Pomp has been doing. Anthony Pompliano's company, ProCap. They currently hold 404,932 Bitcoin. ProCap BTC. Pomp came out, I think, over this past week and said that they're going to be raising $1 billion, and he's already gotten through half of that. He bought around $500 million worth. So I'm sure the next $500 million are going to be coming pretty soon. And they're going to be one of the biggest holders of Bitcoin. I think over the next couple months, you're going to see them go through the next 500 million. And they're going to have probably somewhere around 10,000 Bitcoin. If you want to look it up, the ticker is CCCM. They are very new. I couldn't even actually find the ticker trading. But I think what Pomp has, going on, I think could also surprise a lot of people. And, shout out to Pomp. He's one of the people I was watching back in 2018 that helped me. His YouTube videos helped me understand what Bitcoin actually was. So I'm hoping that they do good, wishing them best. But another company that should be on people's radars. CCCM, ProCap Bitcoin.
Anthony Pompliano, definitely a stand-up Bitcoiner. He's on record basically saying, being asked about altcoins, and he's been on major news stations in the U.S. and they pry about Ethereum or Litecoin or whatever other ticker they want to show, XRP, and he literally will not speak about it. He will not speak about altcoins at all. So he is definitely a diehard Bitcoiner. Pay attention to what Pomp's doing with these Bitcoin treasury companies. This isn't anything with Anthony Pompliano, but just understand the strategy, understand the team, understand how they plan to execute, how they plan to raise money, who the investors are, and also the transparency that they're going through as they're exploring their Bitcoin treasury strategy. Because all those little factors matter. Simon and Dylan, and we've talked about this too on the channel, they're like a match made in heaven. They're, as far as, what Simon brings to the table, as far as, his, expertise, he's was a derivatives trader, and what, Dylan, brings to the table with his, expert knowledge on Bitcoin, the TradFi space, them merged, are the leaders of that Bitcoin treasury company. They have other players involved. I'm not giving all the credit to two people, but you have to have the right team, the right leaders on the team, leading these initiatives in order for these initiatives to be successful. Because just because company A wants to do the same exact thing that MetaPlanet does, even if they have the liquidity, it doesn't mean they can execute with the same efficiency. And it's all about, who's leading these initiatives, and also who's backing initiatives. And there's a lot of other things behind the curtain that matters when you come to vetting out each one of these companies. So just an FYI for those that are going down these rabbit holes, trying to figure out, should I invest in A, B, or C? That's my take there.
Yeah, and just a quick chart here. This is MetaPlanet last year in 2024. They were trading at around $400 a share. And it dropped 80%. And you can see where it's come since then. It's up huge. So expect volatility with all these treasury companies. And this, like you just take MetaPlanet, for example, there's going to be volatility. There's going to be ups and downs in these markets. But it's mostly up and right if the team can execute. So just wanted to share that quick there.
Yeah, really quick before we go to the next topic. If you're watching, you're tuning in, we appreciate your support. If you haven't did so already, smash the like button, share this video, repost it. We appreciate all your guys' support. Just trying to get this, gamma out there to as many people as we can, and just it's all about trying to help the community out.
Yeah. Cool. Anything that you wanted to go into, or?
I think we touched on the majority. I think there's one company. Let's look at ALTBG. ALTBG's been being pretty consistent in their Bitcoin treasury acquisition strategy. Shout out to Alexandre from ALTBG. Let's look at the chart really quick to see what we see. Get these drawings off here. So we have seen some divergences on the price, and the price seems to be trending potentially down as far as just from a technical stance. Where the bottom will be, we can speculate, but this is a bull market. There's cool-offs, there's 20, 30, 40% pullbacks in bull markets. Trying to make these, short time trades. This could be just an ABC correction. This could have already been played out. This could have been the bottom for this pullback. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but, trying to time the market, is always it's like catching a falling knife. So once again, time in the market always outpaces timing the market. And one thing to note, if you're looking at the gaps, I know it's not one-to-one with some of these international treasury companies, but there was a gap here that, as of this recent price pullback, came down and filled. So could the pullback be over? Potentially, but dips are for buying opportunities, especially in bull markets. But ALTBG, it's an exciting company. It's a Bitcoin treasury company based out of France, as we talked about before. They have, as of late, I believe the number is 1,728 Bitcoin. They bought more Bitcoin this week using the TOBAM structure, which is also an ATM-like structure. So once again, they're selling actual shares of ALTBG to then come and reposition or pull the spring back, if you may, buy Bitcoin. So the price is that spring getting pulled back as they load up the books with Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin takes that next leg up, that spring, then expands, and then you can see that very, very aggressive upwards price appreciation, as we've seen for this company. This company has been one of the big winners. There's big companies that are trying to short ALTBG, and they actually just closed quite a few of their positions on those shorts. So basically, short sellers are sort of falling to the wayside. So that could mean that, majority of the pain for this particular company is potentially behind us. Nothing's guaranteed in these markets, as volatility is expected. But that's my take on ALTBG. Shout out to them.
Yeah, they've been executing pretty well, growing shareholder confidence, I would definitely say. And I just wanted to mention some quick company updates. ECD Automotive, they're raising $500 million for Bitcoin Treasury. And then you have Back Holdings. They came out this week and they're raising $1 billion. And Grant Cardone, they just revealed this week they bought 1,000 BTC, his Cardone Capital, which was like a real estate play. And now they're having real estate plus Bitcoin. They're doing some type of hybrid strategy where he's pulling from his real estate to buy Bitcoin. And over the long term, Grant Cardone wants to own 4,000 Bitcoin. And I think this is really interesting. I think we're going to start to see more real estate guys come into Bitcoin because they can leverage a lot of cheap capital, especially when interest rates go down. They can leverage cheap capital, pull from the real estate. And instead of going to buy more real estate, which is what a lot of real estate guys used to do in the past, with the, was it 1039 exchange or whatever, and now I think they're going to be taking some of those funds, putting them into the best performing asset in the world. And in my opinion, it kind of demonetizes real estate because instead of real estate investors just pulling money, buy more real estate, pulling money, buy more real estate, they're going to pull money and buy Bitcoin, pull money from the real estate, buy more Bitcoin. So I think we're going to see more of that in the future. So it's cool to see Grant Cardone doing that. I think his brother might have been the one who orange pilled him. His brother's been out there pretty heavy on Twitter.
Gary's been working on Grant for some time. Gary's been into Bitcoin for quite some time. Shout out to both of them. But yeah, we're going to start seeing this. This is going to be the new norm. Like Grant Cardone is just one of the bigger names that came out and publicly announced what they plan on doing with a Bitcoin strategy for his overall real estate portfolio. But it's a very similar concept of not one-to-one, but of what some of these treasury companies are doing. They're hitting the ATM to buy more shares. But, for those that have equity built up in, real estate, that real estate lives in a company portfolio, and that company portfolio has a net value of X, and they're able to pull liquidity and now prop up their company with the liquidity that they were able to access from their real estate. And it'll make their overall company valuation. I think it's Cardone Capital or whatever he's running. But yeah, this is definitely exciting time. It's Bitcoin is slowly eating everything. Bitcoin is slowly demonetizing the entire world, and we've been saying this for quite some time on our channel. You need to change your denominator. Your denominator should not be denominated in whatever currency in your given geographic location is that you use, whether that's the US dollar, whether that's um, the yen, the euro. It doesn't matter where you're at geographically, you should denominate everything into Bitcoin. Even your purchases, when it comes to those purchases that you need versus want. Need versus wants is a huge thing that get people killed in the finance game, because they see something shiny and they just want that new car. They just want to go buy that new house, but the house they're in might be good. But if you denominate, excuse me, and if they denominate, how much that new asset, whether it's a house, I'm not calling a car an asset, but whatever it is that you want to buy, if you denominate that in Bitcoin value, let's just say you go buy that Lamborghini, and that Lamborghini's $500,000. Okay, we'll do the math. That's roughly, give or take, close to 5 Bitcoins. So fast forward 5, 10 years, that's a pretty expensive Lamborghini. That's how you sort of have to sort of look at the denominator. Denominate your life in Bitcoin, and the rest will work itself out.
Definitely. I like what Carlton Way 1 says here. He says, every industry will adopt Bitcoin. Wealth transfer is happening now. 100% agree with him. You're seeing all these companies buying Bitcoin that we talk about doing the same strategy playbook. And if you think these are too risky and you don't want to invest in those, just buy Bitcoin, because you know where Bitcoin's going over the long term. And there's one thing I want to talk about here was a company that nobody talks about, which is Tether. Private company, so you can't really invest in them. But Tether holds over 100,000 Bitcoin, and nobody really talks about Tether. But their CEO did an interview a couple of weeks ago on Anthony Pompliano's channel, and Circle just had their IPO, and because of the stablecoin legislation and because of their IPO, the stock price just went up crazy. And we know that USDC is not anywhere close to being as big as USDT. Tether has been the early adopter, and they've kind of won in that space so far. Now you have all these other companies, banks, JP Morgan, Amazon, trying to get their own stablecoin. But Tether would be the second, or would be a $2 trillion company if they were to go public with the same valuation metrics as Circle. That's what the CEO said. So right now, that would make Tether the 6th biggest company in the world. So with stablecoin legislation passing and all the crypto rails getting built out now and it's all being regulated, Tether is not going to do anything but grow. And they're putting 15% of their profits into Bitcoin. Right now, like every quarter, they buy around 9,000 Bitcoin. That's around 36K a year. But people need to realize Tether is a huge buyer of Bitcoin. They're going to continue to buy Bitcoin. And as stablecoins get bigger and bigger, and as Tether gets bigger and bigger, Tether is probably going to be one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're going to be buying Bitcoin with 15% of their profits. So I think that gets lost in the shuffle a lot of the times. Like all these companies are buying Bitcoin. Every industry is denominating into Bitcoin. So it's kind of everything's being denominated into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's kind of demonetizing everything, if you think about it in that way. Even in the crypto space, we're seeing crypto guys like Charles Hoskinson. He says that he's going to sell ADA to buy Bitcoin. And then you still have some of these altcoin channels talking about ADA is the next 5x gainer over the next year. Like altcoin season's coming, but like altcoin companies are looking to sell their dead altcoins. They're kind of like zombie companies at this point. They're selling that to buy what everybody else is buying because they see where everything's going towards. Everything's going towards Bitcoin. So have a long-term focus, buy Bitcoin, and ignore all the big noise if you want to. It's probably the best thing to do. Not financial advice.
Right. Altcoins are dead. Altcoins can be equivalent to these these pre-Bitcoin treasury companies. They were zombie companies. And they change their trajectory by basically changing their denominator and starting their Bitcoin treasury. And ADA might, have some more years of life. We'll see how effective that strategy is and how Charles implements it. It'll be very interesting to watch moving forward. Could it be an opportunity? 100%. Anything with Bitcoin, supercharged on the back end, definitely could be an opportunity. Real world use case, that's a whole different conversation, and what that looks like. That's still to be determined. But the point and the fact of the matter is that, Bitcoin is slowly eating the software that's eating the world, and every industry. As Carlton had mentioned, shout out to him.
And to talk about the comment about DJT Trump Media, they raised supposedly $2 billion, and their earnings call is in August. So we'll see if they bought that Bitcoin. But I also saw something where they said they're trying to raise another $12 billion to buy Bitcoin. So that's even more money coming from Trump Media. So that's got to keep them on your radar too. They could have over 100K Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think for that play, and I'm just speculating here because I don't have any insider information, obviously, but that goes back to the transparency piece. They discussed making this buy, which really haven't heard anything else. Has it officially been bought? Has it not? It's sort of how maybe potentially GameStop has played it. GameStop actually just came out, and I think they're raising some more liquidity to buy some more Bitcoin. But things are sort of done in a really non-transparent way in comparison to some companies like MetaPlanet and Strategy and such. And it doesn't mean that the way they're doing it is incorrect, but it just gives more investor confidence when it comes to, allocation of given percentages towards these particular securities.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, oh yeah, just wanted to share this quick and talk about the current retail investors. This Google Trends. This is, just Google Trends. Nobody's, I removed Bitcoin. We'll have MSTR. Remove Bitcoin, like MSTR, MTPLF for the past 5 years. Nobody's talking about any of this stuff at all.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate fact that retail is asleep at the wheel. There's a lot of opportunity for the retail space in general. The institutions, the big boys are here to play, and they're not going anywhere. But I mean, this is why there's cycles. This is why there's markets. Retail tends to always get dumped on. But it seems like, when you go to some of these conferences, you are in this Bitcoin bubble and you feel like everybody in the world knows all this stuff that's going on. But in reality, it's a small percentage of the overall population that is really, really granularly in tune with what's actually going on with the Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole. They think they're priced out. They think there's no opportunity. They think Bitcoin's over 100K. They think in whole numbers. I can't buy a whole coin, so I'm not going to dollar cost average. It's the wrong mindset to have, and that's why we put out the content we do to help educate, help reach people. But that's sort of why retail tends to get dumped on from time to time. So, or all the time.
Yep. And yeah, we can talk about the Bitcoin ETFs next. Just going to share some of the flows recently.
ETF flows.
Yeah, ETF flows. Pull it up here. Past, what was this? Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. That's it's probably 1.4 billion there. We haven't got the full numbers in today, but the ETFs are gobbling up this stuff. Everybody's buying Bitcoin right now. This just goes to show you where everything is headed towards. And we got people on our Instagram and our TikTok talking about, well, the Bitcoin ETFs are doing okay, but people are selling the Bitcoin ETF for the Ethereum ETF. I mean, Ethereum ETF's doing okay, but not billions of dollars every week. So we'll see how Ethereum plays out, but it shows you where all the money's flowing into right there, along with all the companies.
Cool. Do you want to pivot and talk about the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac news?
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Okay. So as of late, there's been a director that officially, put some legislation on the table that hasn't been signed in yet, for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to consider cryptocurrency holdings as assets when it comes to mortgage underwriting for single-family homes. So just to be able to utter that sentence and have this conversation is leaps and bounds for the space. But in layman's terms, this means that borrowers could go to a bank and include crypto assets as part of their personal reserves without needing to convert them over to USD first. But only crypto that's held in U.S. Regulated centralized exchanges is eligible. So you gotta adjust for given volatility and other risks. But this is just because this conversation is being had, it's the industry has been taking huge leaps and bounds. So previously, if you had crypto, what you had to do, you had to sell it, and then you had to hold some cash back because then you have a short or long-term capital gain. And that just sort of defeats the purpose of having to, use your crypto as collateral. But now you can potentially just keep your crypto investment all the way intact and count on them to qualify. It'd be interesting to see how this plays out, and what the small print, with some of this, as these loans get drawn up. If you say buy a house towards the peak of the bear market and you put up some collateral, we need to recapitalize that collateral to make sure that threshold stays, at a given number, a given figure when it comes to US dollar value. So it'll be interesting, but just that these conversations are being had. They're still drafting details that need rules and safeguards in place. There hasn't been any approvals yet, but it's this adoption, happening before our eyes. Eventually, they'll get all the bells and whistles, T's crossed, I's dotted, and it'll be just commonplace when it comes to going to get a mortgage.
Yeah, it just goes to show you guys where everything's going towards Bitcoin. Legislation's going towards Bitcoin. I believe they want to get the next thing that's coming is the crypto framework. They want to get that out by August or September, and we got the potential Bitcoin strategic reserve. So all the legislation and all the regulators, they're all pro Bitcoin, and it's kind of like the apex, or I guess like the point we hit. We're hitting that point now to where Bitcoin is finally being accepted, and Bitcoin, all it has to do is it's probably just going to run away in terms of price because it's just being incorporated in everything. So,
yeah. One thing to note, as of now, it is not considering eligibility for cold storage wallets. So just be mindful of, Coinbase and these regulated entities are in bed with the government as they should be. And if you do use crypto for collateral, there's going to be liens placed against it, even though it's still technically in your wallet. So what that looks like and how that process works, it's still to be determined because right now this is the early days of getting this drafted. But those are, some of the safeguards and things that we're talking about right now. But, highly doubt that they're going to allow you to use your ledger at JP Morgan and not be on the hook for anything. So keep that in mind.
Cool. I think it's one last thing I'll say here is I think when we're talking about these companies, we're talking about Bitcoin, and we're talking about strategy. I think you can go down like the risk ladder. I think the least risky is buying the Bitcoin. If you want to outperform Bitcoin, you can do strategy. If you want to get really risky, you could do options on Bitcoin or strategy. You have unlimited upside there, but you could also lose all your money. And then right there with options, these Bitcoin treasury companies, it's like high risk, high reward, but you don't know how the company's going to operate. You don't know if they're going to sell their Bitcoin. So you kind of go down that risk ladder.
Yeah. Closing thoughts. I agree with that sentiment. And if you're somebody that's watching this and you only know, 20% of what we're talking about, then education's key. So before you talk about a Bitcoin treasury company or whether strategy versus MetaPlanet or any other treasury company, understand Bitcoin thoroughly. There's a lot of good reads out there. Have some back and forth conversations with, Chat GPT. Ask the right questions. You got to make sure you're asking the right questions to get the right answers. But educate yourself on what Bitcoin is. Put in some time. And then once you understand Bitcoin thoroughly, then you can go down your own personal investment thesis and understand why MicroStrategy is what it is when it comes to Bitcoin treasury companies and being the biggest Bitcoin treasury company and what they're going to be doing long term and where that company is going long term. And the slew of other companies, MetaPlanet and all. Once you understand the underlying, then it'll make everything else that much clearer for you. So, but everything we talk about, once again, is not financial advice. This is just, two guys on the internet talking about our opinions and our thoughts and the direction that the space is going. So do your own due diligence. You can get a lot of information from our channel, other channels on YouTube, going down the X and Twitter spaces. There's a lot of information that's at your fingertips. And if you're not searching for it, whatever algorithm, because your phone hears you talk about the NBA finals, that's what your algorithm's going to show you. So sometimes you got to sort of change your algorithm, do your own homework, do your own due diligence, and, go from there. Cool. So I think that's it for today. We appreciate everybody. Once again, you guys like this, smash the like button while you're here, share it, repost it. We appreciate each and every one of you. We do this every single day. It's typically 8 p.m. Eastern. We did it a little bit early because, there's a little bit of travel that's included.
Every Thursday.
Yeah, so every Thursday. So any other thoughts from you, Aaron?
Nope. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Had to start this one a little bit earlier. So.
See you guys later.